Welcome, everybody, for the Voices of AI Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Malti, the founder and CEO of VIO, a data and AI intelligence company. Today, I'm super excited to introduce Jean-Louis Queguiner, who goes by the name of JL. And JL, welcome to our podcast today. Very excited to hear about your journey. You're the co-founder and CEO of Gladia, an AI company which is redefining how organizations use audio and voice data. I mean, after building a large scale cloud infrastructure at Intercloud and OVH Cloud, JL founded Gladia with a bold mission to make voice intelligence accessible to every product and workflow. So, welcome, JL, to our show. And we would like for you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate. Talking about myself, I'm married with three kids. I lived in New York, originally from France, as you can hear from my beautiful French accent, as I like to say. Not easy to understand all the time. Yeah, I started Gladia after building GPUs and things like that at OVH Cloud. And one of the frustration that leads to Gladia was that none of the good speech recognition systems or the system that you have in meeting recordings were catching up appropriately my accent and French language and so on. So I decided to build like a speech to text infrastructure that was able to handle not only English by English speakers and by the American or UK community, but also by, the rest of the world. So that was the initial mission. And we kept pushing toward that. And since I would say the last year, 18 months, I would say voice AI agents started to rise. And now everyone is looking at us and saying, how did you find that voice was a big topic to address? I was just, that was just personal frustration. And this is how it started. And now, I live in New York City and, life is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big change for your children, right? Coming to New York from France. I'm sure I saw your post which said, they left their toys. So it's an adjustment, but they love it.
It's an adjustment.
Yes.
Yeah, they love it. After you see the human brain is pretty amazing. When you think about it, sometimes it's like you can compare that to AI, but I mean the number of hours that my kids have for training to learn English is like pretty limited compared to the number of hours that an AI algorithm has to have to learn a new language. So you see the human brain is still way ahead of AI.
Yeah, so very true, actually. So you talked about lightning transcriptions. You started off like that as a speech APIs, and you've expanded into a broader voice intelligence. And you also spoke a little bit about what triggered that evolution as well. Coming from a strong infrastructure background, JL, how did your experience at Intercloud and OVH Cloud shape how you build Gladia's AI architecture?
That's a good question. The first thing that is probably underrated into among, I would say, the AI company right now is that the cost to operate is pretty intense.
Yeah.
And you need to understand the business models that goes with it. And that's not always the easiest way. So understanding CapEx, OpEx, understanding how you build the pricing is already something that needs to be in your mind when you start to design your algorithm and your architectures. And that's, I would say, not the most developed skills among engineers. Usually they tends to be extremely focused on distributed architectures, like, all these frameworks that you can think about, all these type of microservices, architectures and stuff. But it tends to forget that everything runs at some point on the physical hardware, and physical hardware in the end, especially in AI, has a lifetime. It has some limited capabilities because not all hardware are the same. They have a certain cost, and you need to understand exactly how much power you can drain from a specific infrastructure at a certain price to make the business run in an appropriate way. And that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned. The second one is in AI, usually you're transporting a lot of data at very high speed, especially in voice and video. And there are many things that you're going to we are encountering on a daily basis that you won't find in other businesses, especially in SaaS, and saturation of network and things like that. And having in a big company doing cloud, you'll see some effects on the routers, on the network that usually you don't encounter in SaaS. So that's definitely helping a lot into debugging, large scale compute with like high growth and lot of traffic from the customers.
Okay. Okay. Now that's interesting. So, do you all have like a playbook in terms of like when you walk with a client on their speech to voice kind of journey, like text to voice? Do you have like a structure, architecture in mind with your cloud bill, your storage, and compute?
A good question. Usually, it's more about the playbook is more about how you should buy your AI, because most of the people that we talk to are pretty new to the space,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and they need to understand how to buy AI and how to compare the providers. I'm super open in terms of like I would say as a person, I'm super open, but as a company too. I think you shouldn't stick to Gladia if Gladia is not good. I think we should be with our customer because we are the best. So usually what I'm trying to do is helping the customer making the best choice, which happen to be Gladia most of the time. And you have basically a few milestones or a few elements that you have to have in your decision or helping them in the decision. The first thing is like, what is the objective of the AI you're trying to build, the AI tool you're trying to build? Is
Hmm.
it internal or external? Because you don't have the same resilience to be put in place if it's external versus internal. You don't have the same guardrails to have, the same security measures, etc., etc. And usually it starts with that. They said, we want AI. It's like, yeah, is it for you or for the customers? And they say, oh, for both. Okay, but then you need to be more specific on what you're trying to
Right.
do.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And then the second thing, I ask a simple sentence, and that's the one sentence that's going to drive all our conversation is like, they need to answer this sentence. I want someone to do something, right, in a specific environment using a specific device with a specific time frame. So I say from when to when? Is it like from 8 a.m. in the morning on Monday morning till 5 p.m. on Friday, or is it during the weekend, etc.? Because the choice of the provider will be different. You need to define an acceptable rate, error rate, at which point
Yeah.
you're able to accept the failure of AI based on which criteria. And then you need to define the other question is like, if we have an error, I will do, and you need to define your scenario. And basically, with these simple questions, which is the who, the what, the environment, the device, operation schedule, acceptable error and mitigations, with those 7 criteria, usually you're able to have a good view on what is the appropriate way to lead your business and to
Yep.
make your decisions. And so sometimes they're like, yeah, I need to operate between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. in Monday morning. And you're like, yeah,
Mm.
okay, rush hours like everyone. Did you know that most of the providers are having extremely high latency in those cases because everyone is
Right.
rushing to have the same resources at the same time? And they only test it during the night because they are dev and geeks and nerds. So those kind of things are definitely like helping them to make the good decisions.
Wonderful. So, what does truly voice intelligence mean to you today? And how far are we truly from kind of understanding speech context in real time?
So the type of customers you mean that we have?
Yeah, like the type of customers, and most of it is based on the contextual information. So, for Gladia products, what kind of trends and breakthroughs you're making in terms of more contextual speech?
Yeah, yeah. The contextual space is not something that is super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of constraints or effects into having context injection into LLMs and speech to text systems. It can tend to lead to hallucinations, for instance. So you need to be extremely careful with those things. And of course, it's influencing and improving the quality of the transcription. But among the breakthroughs, there are the way you're going to design your speech to text systems. We did it a bit differently from the competition because we use models that are called sec to sec, which
Yeah.
is an architecture that is pretty close to LLMs, that is able to have an understanding of the context you're actually running into, being smarter than just like doing the speech transcription based on the what is called phonemes, so the voice elements.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of the breakthrough that was brought by the transformers, but that's not enough. There are new architecture that are coming as we speak, which are called like speech LM and things like that, that Microsoft is extremely good at.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we're going to keep pushing into these directions. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So that brings up to one of the very core question as a CEO and a co-founder, JL. What are your key priorities right now in terms of product innovation, scaling, infrastructure, enterprise adoption? Yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So usually I would describe for everyone that is going into this entrepreneurial journey as a spiral. So it means that you're like running in circle, but at the same time you are elevating yourself.
Yes.
So you have short cycles, and then you have longer cycles that are the elevation. I feel that every cycle is being built the same. You have a strategic vision, then you have the building of the financing that goes with it. Then you have you have the product and the strategic thinking around the finance. Then you have everything that is around hiring, and then deploying, and then everything that is about selling and support. And then you go into another cycle like strategic thinking, financing, hiring, and you do those circles. So those are the circles kind of. And the elevation is between the stage of maturity you have. So the first stage is like seed.
Yeah.
You're doing into this circle, but you're trying to find the PMF. So you have like a bit of a longer run in this circle. It's like I'm doing this circle, but the goal is to find the PMF.
Yeah.
And once you reach this, you go to the next elevation, which is usually A round, which is like I'm trying to find the first sign of like commercial tractions or growth. And then you move into B, which is like go to market. Now I have a product, I have repeatable cycles in sales. How do I like find hockey sticks into this thing? So, and every time you go into this financing cycle, you kind of like again like looping around and moving from seat to seat until you elevate to the next stage.
Yeah.
So I would say it's more like a spiral than just having like one particular focus.
Yeah.
You have one focus when you wake up and go to sleep, but there is this like kind of like focus that you have to have in the company on a quarterly basis that you need to adjust kind of the rest of the company to the strategic thinking that you have to elevate.
Culture, and I think Gladia is now in Series A funding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So the AI audio space is moving pretty fast, right? Which basically there has been the hardest trade-offs between open models, proprietary systems, and accuracy at scale, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
So the first is I would be a bit more subtle than that. It's not only accuracy. So accuracy is like how good you are overall in a transcription.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I say good morning, Malathi. Okay, right? If I spell wrongly morning, right, and say morning, let's do that.
Yeah.
But I get your name right versus if I get good morning right, but I have your first name wrong. It's the same, what is called word rate. So it's the same accuracy overall because I made one mistake over 3 words, which is called 30% word rate. 30% of the word I've emitted are wrong. Do you think it's the same precision in both cases? No, because I got your name wrong. So if I'm feeding a CRM, after all, I don't care if good morning was wrong. DLM is going to get the context and whatever. If I get your first name or last name wrong, then that becomes a big problem for the CRM, for the, I don't know, UPS tracking, for the code of your parcel tracking. I can go on and on with like address, phone numbers, emails, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So there are two things. There is the accuracy where everyone is tending to align.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a precision, how good you are on the key data. And I tend to like separate the two of them because we are at the stage where speech AI is good enough now that we can make the distinction between the two. But that's not solved at all. After all, it's not solved. There is the accents also because the data sets that people train on are usually American people with American accents. And I'm in a good position to tell you that's not representing your real life.
Yeah. True.
Same goes with like background noise and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, even if you were on par with like open source, there is always this problem of scalability. And what we've seen with our customers is like, even if they were to be deploying some good open source models, they end up like having these problems like voice AI needs to be scaling super fast and GPU are taking between 10 and 20 minutes to be available.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but people is like, no, I just need them right now. So there is a bunch of things that you have to do in your infrastructure, in the way you forecast, in the way you negotiate. I mean, of course, you can be like always having GPU on, but then you have a problem of price, right? And cost. So you always have to find the balance between acceptable cost, acceptable quality, acceptable speed, on top of just the accuracy and the precision that I mentioned. And what we've seen so far is that that's an unsolved problem for most of the people, first. And secondly, as you said, the race is on, not only on the foundation model level that we are fighting on,
right,
but also on the upper layers. Think about like the Sibyl, Phasm, Fireflies, like all these people are fighting, right? They're fighting Gong. Gong has to fight again. You have Notion that has multi-recorders now. You have Atio. I have plenty of examples like that. And you can go in voice AI agents, the same. You have VAPI, you have retail, you have like plenty of new people and new players every day. So they are mostly fighting on the features and not fighting on the hosting and the scaling of those like foundation model. And that ended up being a question not only of about the precision and open source versus open source. It's like, where do I put my best engineers? Do I put them into scaling this open source model, or do I put them into building the features that make me different from the rest of the market? And the answer is pretty obvious. It's a choice. And of course, I have my VCs that say, oh, you should do X, Y, Z on top of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I have the best engineer that enter where do I route them? Do I route them to speech to text, or do I route them into this fancy idea you have?
Yeah.
And it's always come down to this. You have a limited time, limited resources, limited talents. Where do you put them? And intention is super important in this case, especially when the race is extremely hard.
Yeah. No, that's true. Actually, sometimes you have to balance engineering and product teams on what is your go-to-market use case going to be. So I do see that Gladia made a major improvements in latency and multilingual support. Right? How do these upgrades shape the use cases? Especially the client use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not only like shaping the use cases, but it's shaping also the way you are thinking about your strategy. So we are in a competitive place, right? Most of we can say whatever we want, but the best software factory are based in the US. Okay, as of now. I won't go into the debates of political things about immigration and blah, 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 because we know like most of the talents in the US are people that are coming from immigration. But as of now, the West Coast is probably one of the most innovative software space in the world, right? And so now that you're building, let's say the next Phasm, Circleback, Fireflies, whatever, okay? You're building this new generation tool. Do you want this to be the leader in the market and having a global presence, or do you want to be local? And I think there is a big difference between the previous generation of software we were building and the new one with AI. In the past, let's say you have Salesforce, let's say, or HubSpot. HubSpot can be used everywhere. You can use them in India, China, whatever, France, Germany, Spain. The only thing you have to do is like translate the freaking UI with the buttons. That's the only thing you have to do. Now, if you have something that is based on voice, which is like most of the tools, if it doesn't understand your local language or doesn't understand your accents, you ended up being a local player, which is a big local. Like US is like 300, 400,000, 400 million people. That's already big, but that's not what is the ambition of those people building on the West Coast, right? So you ended up like, if you're not fast enough and you choose a speech to text provider that is global from the start, you're going to end up being like targeting a smaller market. It's going fast, especially with like Lovable, like Codex, Claude, Anthropic, etc. All these tools are helping you to code. So I can replicate pretty much any software within a few days in my local region. And the local players that did massive investment from the West Coast is not able now to be the leader in every region because it was localized into their own country and their own language. And so you have two races. You have the race to be building AI that are global and not being replicated right away by local players. And I think now being global for us has been obvious since from the start. Now it starts to be obvious from the people because we were born into multilingual environment, but it starts to be obvious now for the people building on the West Coast too.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, as you said, there's so many dialects, accents, and, you maintain a corpus of all this information centrally so that, it is recognized and interpreted as something very in close patterns, So, yeah, I feel it is pretty challenging, especially from a bilingual standpoint. But I think with all the innovations happening in the industry, it's amazing. Give you kudos for that, Jill, for, attempting. So how do you balance the philosophy between open source and commercial edge when competing in this AI infra space?
That's a good question. I think AI is a bit different from the generation we had before of software. In the past, when you had the software and it was open source, you had what is the core system. When you wanted to add some contribution, you were doing some pull requests, some addition to the main software. There was no need to be what is called forking, so splitting the open source project into over sub project without reconciliating the value into the main project. Okay, the open source was like, I have what's called the main project. I'm gonna have some variations, and then they go back into the main branch. The thing with AI is that those tiny branches are actually fine tuning and post training and things like that. And you don't have a way to merge that and those features or those improvements to the main branch, into the core product. And so it's good in the sense that people are getting the appropriation, but on a model production standpoint, you are not able to capitalize on the value or the variations that you have. So if you was used to be Elasticsearch and or Redis or whatever, any improvement from the community becomes an improvement capitalized for the next version. If you're building Mistral or whatever, any variations and fine tuning of the model won't be gathered into a more intelligent model for the next version. So that's one of the problem I see with the business model. That's the first thing, is kind of reinventing a new software every time.
Yeah.
And not capitalizing on the community, which is the thing that makes the open source software sustainable on the long run. And the second thing is like the cost of init of every incremental version or every version you have is so high. An LLM is going to be around 150 million to between 50 million to 150 million to train. So every time you have a new version, you have like you release a new version, it's at the top of the leaderboard. People do a bunch of fine tuning. You're being pushed at the bottom, which is not good for your brand. You have plenty of like fine tuning. People end up not using your software, but using like forks, which is not what you want, because in terms of monetization, you would like people to use the main version. So it's really, really, really hard. To be honest, AI is extremely hard in this, and not very being very nice with open source people.
Okay. Okay. So when we talk about open source, something came up to me. I was thinking like, there's such wonderful, smart engineers, right? What do you recommend for the engineering community if they want to make a space in this voice intelligence? Like, what kind of skills do you look for in engineers?
That's a good point. I think most of the people that's going to listen to this podcast are engineers in general. When they did their studies, there was no LLM, right? There was no sec to sec. There was nothing of this. So what should we expect from them? And then the answer is pretty obvious. It's about not the skills that they acquire at the university, but it's about how flexible they are in their mind and the capability to learn new things very fast.
Yeah.
And so I would say the only thing is like learn to learn and be always on top and be curious. I think and being hard worker, because it's pretty tough out there and there is change everywhere. You need to be working a lot. To be honest, we can say whatever. If you chill, you're dead, because in 2 weeks there are new innovations on the side of the road. So, and iterate a lot, do some proof of concept on the side of your work to be always up to date and to find new ideas that you can implement in your daily life. That's the only thing I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's such an evolving thing, getting up, picking up new skill. That's a very personality trait, right, JL? But if somebody has to pick up, you would say like, prompt engineering, knowing knowledge about LLMs, maybe Python, TypeScript.
I think Python and TypeScript will always be a place to go, because whatever you do, you need to understand what the model is bringing on the table when they are writing codes. So that's definitely like a skills. Not the difference between prompt engineering and LLMs. I think I'd rather go with understanding how LLMs works rather than prompt, because I feel that prompt engineering is just a phase. A bit like, when we had softwares back in the day, when you had to compile with bytes and you had to read assembly code. And I would say that's a bit the same. We're in the same situation now. Doing the prompt engineering is back like, how do you treat the assembly code in some ways? But let's be honest, nobody does that anymore. Almost nobody. So there are going to be a few set of people that's going to do that, to optimize, to do prompt caching, blah, blah, blah. But most of the people that are going into prompt engineering right now, I think they're going to have a good job and for the next few years, but they're going to end up having no job in the future if they only focus on that, because prompt will optimize prompt. You're going to have small language model that's going to take the prompt, that's going to optimize the prompt, and then it's going to go into the LLMs. And I'm sorry, but you're going to be gone at some point if you do that. Like assembly code versus like just-in-time compilation and stuff like that. So I would rather understand how model works. The architecture is going to change, but from the moment you understand what is the logic behind the scene, how it's fetching the tokens and probabilities and attention mechanism, once you get that, you're able to be up to speed and understand the new type of models and what you can get from them. So this is where I would go. And of course, Python and TypeScript are definitely the way to go. I'm seeing more and more people going into Rust, to be honest. It's hard to find people in Rust. So if people want to have like a good salary, they can be good in Rust, because it's very high performance infrastructure coding, and we are lacking of engineers in this field. It's very very high performance compilation compiled model of programming, and it's like being requested more and more into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think our data engineers will be super thankful to this insight, GL, for sharing this. So, moving on to any of your client stories that you would like to share with us, which really helped the Gladia's approach that helped move from experimentation to full deployment.
Oh yeah, I have some fun stories actually.
Okay.
So that's more for the builders. Never let a customer like shoot you in the face. I mean, back in the days, we were like really young. We had a lot of fails in the API. I would say when we started, it was unexpected, but people were like liking the product a lot and it had good traction. Unfortunately, like the infrastructure was not able to scale because we didn't expect this traffic. So we were failing probably something around 30% of the API calls back in the day, which then reduced to 10%, 5%, 1%, and then like almost 0% or 0% on a daily basis now. But at the beginning, I remember like we had like probably like 30% fails on the calls in the first few weeks. And I had one customer who was not paying customer at the time, but one person that wanted to be customer of the service, but I was like pissed off. I was like, this is crap. The city was like, this is crap. We're going to build it ourselves. This isn't acceptable, blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm sorry. We're just starting. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah, let's meet in a few months and see. He goes, no, I'm going to do it by myself. And I remember the CEO coming after probably, I would say a month and a half coming and say, okay, we're going to move to you guys. What's your error rate? We say, we are down to 5%, but we're going to be like promised like September, we're going to be 1% less. Okay, we're going to come to us. Our CTO tried and we tried as much as we could, but we were like 50% fail. And so what I mean by that is scaling is hard and customer can be pissed at the beginning, but I'm sure if you work hard enough and the difference between someone that is successful and someone that is failing is just how long you're able to support your days and nights, your customers, and how much you're willing to solve these problems. And I'm not smarter than anyone else. Probably I'm working harder than most of the people that fail. And I just like never let down a customer. And I just like keep fighting. Every time someone was telling me shit, I was like, why? And let's fix this. And that's the difference between someone that is successful and someone that fails. It's just like how much you're willing to fight.
That's lovely story, Jill. I mean, kudos to you. That's amazing how with such integrity and transparency you led the client journey. That speaks volumes about you as such. Thank you for sharing that story. Moving on to our segment where we see, how do you see, I mean, coming from France, right? How do you see Europe's AI ecosystem evolving, and like what opportunities do you think founders there have that US might work, overlook or
I think the market is so huge that there is a space for everyone, especially on the local players.
Yeah.
I think every country has its own mindset, its own background in terms of culture and stuff. I don't think only one company can capture that whole. And a good example is say, okay, Hollywood is the place where everything is being built for videos and shows and stuff like that. Do you still watch shows that are like in French or in German or in Spanish or Italian? Yes. So it's not because something is mainstream with a lot of money being poured into it, with like a lot of branding and marketing, that there is no space for local culture because there are things that won't be able to be centralized. So I'm just talking about like that's just entertainment. Now imagine that into your daily life or in your work life. It's almost impossible that one company can have all the subtle things that are happening in work life because it's even less aligned than the culture, right? I mean, we probably all love like action movies and stuff like that with almost the same values or same type of ideas, right? But when it comes to work, you have as many culture as companies. You have as many people as you have in the companies and departments within the companies. It's already hard to align. So just imagine like one company aligning everyone. It's super hard. So what I mean is like AI, LLMs, and all these things that relates to human communications and human interactions leaves a lot of space for local players. So that's what I think. And I think the world is getting a bit crazier in the last few months, years and months. And I think everyone is kind of looking at themselves and saying, what kind of identity I want to keep. for my company, for my country, where should I fight? And I'm seeing more and more players saying, I want to fight for my continent, or I want to fight for my country. And when I say fighting, it's not fighting with like guns. I'm talking about fighting by building an ecosystem around them. And yeah, and you have plenty of like, good examples of that. And I think we should be careful. I would cite an example. It was Sam Altman probably a year and a half ago that went to India and said to the prime minister, you shouldn't build your LLMs. We're going to build it for you. I'm like, who are you to tell a country what to do and what not to do when it comes to culture and daily life interactions of millions of people, or billions of people, you know? And that's just one example, but I have like plenty of other examples when you're like, what is our sovereignty in this space and where should we go? I think we need to be careful. We're depending more and more into AI. When you see, let's say, Elon Musk with SpaceX, you know, all these like internet over satellite and cars, Tesla, etc., that can be deactivated with just like one push of a button. And you're depending more and more into AI in your daily job, in your daily task, in your automation. What if we just cut the power at some point of these OpenAI ChatGPT? Do you really want to be into these situations when you have like a AI dependency? We need to think about that. We all need to think about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. How do you like so much vast amounts of data? How do you make sure your privacy, compliance, governance for your audio, video, any of those? How do you manage that?
That's partially because of the background I have in OVH Cloud, which is a super secure cloud because of like Cloud Act and various other topics. But I think it goes into architecture and having good people from the start.
Right.
We need good engineers. Whatever AI is going to do, we need good engineers to understand the security, where you put your data in terms of, again, sovereignty that you mentioned, the security measures, having the right partners. I think it's essential. And I do believe in certification if they are done the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're happy to have like good partners on that. But I know certification can be quick. It's like most of the times, like you self-declare what you do and what you don't do, and the procedure. The reality is like you need to be clean.
Yeah.
And if we do that clean, then that's okay. On our side, I just can say my personal integrity and the integrity of the team. And you can talk about certification, but I know some people have certification and it doesn't worth anything. So
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can say.
Yeah. So, I mean, I completely agree. So it has to be built into the architecture. That's at Bio, we do that. Since we are a data company, highly focused on security at design first before we do, because we have GDPR rules governing the data is most important, and we bake it into the architecture.
Yeah, absolutely. Like governance, you're right. Governance is the right way. It's harder at first, but when you scale, you see that those things are going to cost you like 5-10 times more if you don't think that from the beginning. So
yeah, sometimes
totally
it's
with you.
underrated, but the cost of the risk and the compliance associated with that, yeah, definitely, it makes a lot of sense to think ahead rather than thinking later, actually.
And the more you're going to grow, you're going to have more and more enterprise customers, and you're going to be in the rush. And this is the moment where you're like, oh shit, we should have done that before. Because now changing that with like 20 engineers is like refactoring a big part of the infrastructure. So I totally agree with you. You're going to have to face it anyways with enterprise customer, because they can't be fooled with like certification only. They're not stupid. They have good CISOs. They have good like security engineers. They know what they're doing. They're not stupid. They are used to buy good software. So you can't fool them. So yeah, be clean from the start.
Oh, wonderful. That's very good to know. Coming from a data company, I'll applaud you for that. So, Jael, so this has been a fantastic deep dive, Jael. It's kudos to you and Gladia for redefining the voice intelligence. And thank you for sharing your insights. So for listeners who want to explore more, visit gladia.io or connect with Jael on LinkedIn. Where would our audience try to reach you? I'm sure there will be investors also in this podcast who will be interested to reach out to you, JL. So,
mostly LinkedIn. I used to be pretty active on Twitter, but since someone bought Twitter, I'm a bit less active, to be honest.
Okay.
But Twitter a little bit, but mostly LinkedIn, to be frank.
Okay, wonderful, JL. And that being said, I thank you, Jill, for again coming on our podcast. It's such an insightful discussion. And if you all need to reach out to me, I'm Malti again, your host of this show, and feel free to reach out. We'll leave the links in the description, and we'll sign off for now. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. See you.
Bye.